Hey everybody, welcome back to a Tuesday edition of To The Point podcast. You guys are all doing well. Was prepping for the show last night, getting down topics, making some notes, going into today's show, and before I didn't see it coming, we get a trade. And yes, a trade in pro sports in the National Hockey League. We will break down the Bo Horvat trade to the New York Islanders today in great detail. I'll get into all of it. So that's awesome to get that piece of news right off the bat. I'm going to get into the NFL news involving Brock Purdy today. Want to talk some basketball with all of you. Talk about the Winnipeg Jets win in St. Louis last night. And unfortunately, no Seamus today. He's got a family. He's got some family stuff to take care of, so we're going to let him do that. He should be on later in the week, maybe Thursday. So no problem there. Seamus will be on later in the week. Let him do that today. So all's good there. But yeah, it's a Tuesday. The NHL is kind of in this weird point where we know we're getting to the All-Star break. There's 1 to 2 games a night. And a lot of teams aren't playing. We're just waiting to get to this fantastic All-Star game weekend where I'm not going to watch a second of it. It'll be an off weekend for me from the NHL, certainly. I'll let the 6-year-old kids and whoever else likes the All-Star game go watch the skills competition. Maybe Seamus, more Seamus's demographic, as I lump him in with the 6-year-old kids. I'll let him watch the All-Star game. But before we get to the All-Star break, before we get to the All-Star game, we got some news last night, as I mentioned off the top, and that was that Bo Horvat, the pending unrestricted free agent, former captain of the Vancouver Canucks, has been traded to the New York Islanders for Atu Ratti, one of the Islanders' top prospects. You could argue their top prospect. Anthony Beauvillier, who's been an NHLer for some time now. We'll get to him in a bit. And a conditional first-round pick that is top 12 protected in this year's draft. So how this works is it's top 12 if the Islanders are in the lottery and it falls to the top and it's in the top 12, then they get the draft pick. If they're not, it gets pushed to 2024 and then it becomes an unprotected pick. So that's where it stands. It's conditional first, but they will get a first round pick at some point, just depending on the year and the circumstance in which the Vancouver Canucks get that first round pick. Now, I did not expect a trade to be made last night, certainly. You didn't hear anything about it. No rumors, no Elliot Friedman, no Darren Dreger, no crumbs. And why are we not surprised? This is Lou Lamoriello making the trade from the New York Islanders, who keeps everything hush-hush, who doesn't like to give anything to the media. And he pulled off a fast one last night. And to me, I'd watched the New York Islanders last week, and they played a lifeless game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. They look slow. They look old. And I think we can't forget what the team was just because you add one player to the lineup. Now, Bo Horvat certainly improves this team, but it doesn't change the personnel. But let's just look at what this does off the top. Bo Horvat coming to this team. Bo Horvat joins a forward group with Matthew Barzal, the always talented player, Anders Lee, Brock Nelson, J.G. Pajot, Zach Parise, Josh Bailey, Ross Johnson, Matt Martin. I could name a few others up front, and there's some good talent there. Matt Barzal is one of the most intriguing players in hockey. Not exactly the most dynamic forward. He certainly has his errors on the ice. He has plays that you look at and you're left shaking your head. He has that impact on the game. He's also a world-class talent. Brock Nelson and Anders Lee are similar players. They're both guys with great finish in and around the net. They can be very good at disrupting plays and making life difficult on the forecheck and having an impact on the game that way. But it's not exactly how regular seasons are played anymore, where the forecheck is virtually non-existent. Bo Horvat's having a career year for the Vancouver Canucks, and he's a very, very good centerman. I don't think he's a number one centerman, and if the New York Islanders were hoping to get a number one centerman, I think they're kidding themselves. So we currently stand, the New York Islanders are behind the Rangers, they're behind the Capitals, they're behind the Penguins, and they've played 52 games already. They have 30 games left in their season. So with 30 games, you can jump back into the race, you can make it up, but it's extremely difficult. And I look at this and I can only think one thing, and that's that the New York Islanders are hoping to re-sign Bo Horvat. And best case scenario, you make the playoffs this year. Worst case scenario, you miss the playoffs, but then re-sign the player long term, and you have a plethora of players that you could say could be competitive next season. You have one of the best young goalies in Ilya Sorokin. You could trade Semyon Varlamov for capital, who's a UFA at the end of the year. Maybe make another couple trades at the deadline to improve your team. But even with Bo Horvat arriving on the scene in Long Island, I don't see a playoff team. I don't see a team that's just going to morph into a lot faster. Kyle Palmieri is still going to be slow. Kyle Palmieri is not going to get any faster because Bo Horvat's on the team. Zach Parise and his wounded knees aren't going to get any faster because he's on the team. Does this mean that Scott Mayfield, who could be a trade chip to get more capital to improve this team, is not going to be moved at the trade deadline and you let him walk for nothing? It's not exactly a great business strategy, if you ask me. I understand this from the general manager's point of view of the New York Islanders, Lou Lamoriello. Lou Lamoriello is 80 years old. And yes, you might say 80 is the new 70, if you believe in that sort of mindset, but 80 is 80. And let's be honest, you get to 80 years old, you're closer to death than you are to starting a new business, unless you're Warren Buffett. You're not spry like you used to. I feel old, I'm 24, so I can't imagine what it's like to be 80. I'm just hoping to last another 6 months to get to 25. We'll see how that goes. But Lou's 80. He fired Barry Trotz. He's had to give the vote of approval for Lane Lambert, his first time as an NHL head coach. So things aren't going great in Long Island after getting to back-to-back conference final appearances in 2021 and 2020. So now what? Well, he likely looks at this situation, and the Islanders brass might feel like it's time to move on from Lou. He has his ways. He's a Hockey Hall of Famer. He's one of the best in the history of the game. But guess what? Everybody loses their fastball at some point, and it's time we just cut the cord. We move in a new direction, and we let Lou Lamoriello ride off into the sunset. I don't think that's a horrible decision by Islanders brass. Yes, just because somebody was great at their job doesn't mean you can't get rid of them. Al Arbour was fired. Phil Jackson was let go at points in Chicago from the Bulls. He was let go as a New York Knick. Don Shula was fired in Miami. It happens to every great coach. It happens to every great executive. You are hired to be fired. Doesn't matter how good you were at one point. Eventually, the city, the team, the people you're working for get tired of you. This is a move to save a job, in essence, and try to present a team that I think Lou Lamoriello believes is closer to winning than I do, or the rest of the league, quite frankly. I don't view the Islanders as a rising team, a team that would threaten anybody. They're not better than the Rangers. They're not better than the Rangers getting Bo Horvat. Can they compete with Pittsburgh? Yes, I think they can. I think getting Bo Horvat, they can compete with the Pittsburgh Penguins because Pittsburgh, quite frankly, defensively, they're one of the worst teams in the NHL, period. They are horrible. They gave up a 6 spot to San Jose. A multi-goal lead after the first period, and you blow it like that, you deserve every bit of bad luck that comes towards you. A horrible effort there. And they've been giving up, they average 3.5 goals against per game, the Pittsburgh Penguins. Tristan Jarry, Casey DeSmith, Dustin Tokarski, it doesn't effing matter. They can't make a save. Washington, really inconsistent team. They don't always give a great effort. They've had injuries all year, and they're without John Carlson, their best defender on their team. Sounds tough. So can the Islanders compete with those two teams? Yes, but it only gets them into a possible wild card spot. That doesn't get you a top 3 berth in your own division. You're not better than Carolina with Bo Horvat. You're not better than my Devils with Bo Horvat. You're not better than the Rangers with Bo Horvat. So that means you're the 4th best team in your division with this trade. And believe me, I am all for going for it. I am all for trying to win. I hate tanking. I hate load management. We're going to talk about that in the NBA here in a little bit. It creates for a product that, quite frankly, sucks. It creates a product that isn't desirable. You don't want to watch games because it's just, you don't know who's going to play. A bunch of reserves off the bench coming up from the G League. But you also got to look at a situation and say, in Long Island, what do we have here? What's our future? Do we want Zach Parise again? Do we want Kyle Palmieri? Have these long-term deals worked out? Are we better off if we consider moving Matthew Barzal, as I pontificated about last week? Maybe. Maybe it's time to blow it up because our roster is old. The way our team is built is old. And Lane Lambert may want to coach this team differently. He may want to have different tactics. But quite frankly, when your roster is too slow, it doesn't matter what kind of system the coach wants to run. Because if the horses can't get out of the barn, then you're not going to win the Kentucky Derby. When you got a bunch of old pieces and you want to play high tempo, you want to push the puck, you want to move it up the boards quick, get out of the zone, press. Kyle Palmieri can't do that every shift. Zach Parise can't do that in every shift. JG Pageau, certainly, he's injured every third game. You have a defense that I love on paper. They're all big. They're built like Goliaths. They will take you down like a bunch of woodsmen. But that's not the way the game's played anymore. They have a bunch of similar guys. Pollock. Yes, those are 2 different people. Scott Mayfield. These are all the same type defensemen. And I like them all, but they're similar. Romanov, I like a lot too, but he's similar to the other 3 guys. The one difference they have there is Noah Dobson, good defenseman, having a good season. But it might be because nobody else around him can do what he does, or even come close to it. So this could be a disaster trade for the New York Islanders. Because this wasn't a sign and trade. There's no guarantee Bo Horvat's going to stay in Long Island. You get this far, I'm going to free agency. I'm going to free agency and seeing what I can get. I'm seeing what opportunities are out there. Because Bo Horvat's a Canadian. He's only played in the Canadian market his entire career. Who says he wants to be an Islander? Who said he wants to play at the UBS Arena? What's happening there? Are they going to have a new coach? They're going to have a new GM. It's so unstable. If I'm Bo Horvat, this changes nothing. I play the last 30 games. I try to make the playoffs in New York. I play my heart out. I try to add to my goal total because I want to get a huge payday, whether that's from the Islanders or whether that's from Team X. But I'm not signing a contract before July. Because why the hell would I? I've held out this long. I'm holding out another couple months. And here's a little weight. Bo Horvat will not sign a contract with the New York Islanders. That's a little prediction. If it's wrong on the show, I'll come back to it. It's not happening. He's not signing a deal. He's not linking with the Islanders long term. Why would he? He wants to find out what's out there for him, see what's there, see what's available long term. So no way that he's going to sign up for that. But we have a month. I mean, the Islanders are going to come back and they're going to play some hockey. I don't think it's completely out of the question. And I thought about this last night, throughout the night, because I thought about this trade a lot. I don't think there's a sub 0% chance that the Islanders do not trade Bo Horvat again. Just take this ride with me. Yes, they just traded for Bo Horvat, so they expect to compete for a playoff spot in Long Island. But as I've mentioned right now, in their division, they're behind 5 teams. They're also behind the Buffalo Sabres. They're behind the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're behind Boston, Tampa. You get my point. Right in there with the Florida Panthers. So they're behind a lot of teams. Let's say in February they play their first number of games and they lose a lot of them. Well, they know they're not going to make the playoffs because currently the Islanders sit, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 10th in the East. And yes, they're 2 points out of a playoff spot, but here's another rub. They have 2 points less than Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh has played 3 less games than the New York Islanders. Buffalo is a point up on New York. They played 3 less games. Doesn't mean they're going to win them all, but it means they have an opportunity to win games that New York has already played in, including tonight or tomorrow night for the Buffalo Sabres as they play the Carolina Hurricanes. Florida is a point behind them. Same number of games played. You have Detroit, who's 4 points back with 4 games in hand. Philly's actually in there somehow. God. Ottawa. So there's a lot of teams. Let's say they return to action and they start losing games in February. And we're about February 25th. You don't think people are going to call them? I think they are. Let's see their first number of games. Islanders got the Flyers a week from today. You expect that to be a win, but it's not exactly been smooth sailing for the Islanders. Then they have the Kraken on a back-to-back at home. It's no gimme win. Then they go to Minnesota. So, pardon me. Then they play the Canucks. So, wait, Bo Horvat playing his old team just like that. Love it. So, they got the 2 easier wins in there. Then they go to Montreal. That's a must-win. So, not a brutal schedule out the gate. That might have been part of the decision-making for these Islanders. So, their first 3 games, pretty easy. Then they got the Senators, a non-playoff team. But again, they're a non-playoff team. So, do with that with what you want. So, I'll admit, out of the gate, then they got the Penguins, huge game. You got to win those ones. Then they go to Boston. So, it gets tougher. You got 30 games left. You're going to play a lot of division games that are going to be important. If we're, say, February 25th, the deadline's March 3rd, and the Islanders, you look at it and decide they're not going to make the playoffs. Who says you can't trade Bo Horvat? Teams are still going to want the player, I believe. Teams are still going to look and say, hey, Bo Horvat's a great centerman. He could really help our team. Let's trade for him. And you traded one of your best prospects, Atu Ratti. Maybe you can get a great prospect back from another team to your team, brought in. Maybe the Boston Bruins would trade you their top prospect to get Bo Horvat. Not a guarantee, but they might be interested because they're going all in and they want to win a Stanley Cup. Would be interested in Bo Horvat and start to think, what can we get for this guy? So while the first trade is done and a big piece is off the trade bait board, if I'm TSN, if I'm Sportsnet, all these companies that carry Trade Center and everything like that, I'm putting his name with an asterisk because I don't think this is necessarily done. I love that Lou Lamoriello wants to be aggressive and wants to try to win. But you also got to look at your situation and be like, our team isn't that good. And if we have a slow start out of the gate starting next Monday against the Philadelphia Flyers, it might be the same time, look at it and say, Bo Horvat's going to be at this team for a month. Because why carry a person through the trade deadline that's an unrestricted free agent that you don't know if you're going to be able to sign, if you're going to make the playoffs? Newsflash, you don't. Why? Because it makes no sense. Because then you'd have to give up the package you just gave up for virtually nothing, which is the worst position that you can have. The worst position you can get in. You get rid of prospects, you get rid of players that could help you in the future, and you get jack shit in return. You get 3 months of nothing. And that player walks out the door again for nothing, and he goes somewhere else, and you don't win. To me, this is Lou pulling off a look at me Louie in perfect fashion, but also showing the brass, showing the team, I want to win this year. I believe that we can win this year. Let's go do it. We'll see. I predicted the Islanders would be a playoff team before the season. They've been really disappointing so far, and I look at the way they play, and I doubt that they can get there. But they need to hope the Pittsburgh Penguins, that the Washington Capitals continue to stumble, and that they can take advantage of the faults in their lineup as well. So credit to the Islanders, but I don't think this story is done just yet. Let's get to the Vancouver side of this trade. The Vancouver Canucks get Aatu Ratti, Anthony Beauvillier, and a conditional first. First off, I like Aatu Ratti a lot. He's played less than 10 games for the Islanders this year, but to me, he's their top prospect. He's a centerman that can play the wing, but I prefer him playing center. He's a big body, and he's got some skill. I know him from watching him at the World Junior Championships. He was a good player for Finland. He's got a brother that's also an NHL drafted prospect. But he's young. He's only 20 years old. It's his your first year really pro, playing in Bridgeport, and then he got a cup of coffee this year. But let's see, this year in Bridgeport, 27 games, he's got 15 points. It's actually not bad for his first year in pro hockey. And he's played 12 NHL games this year, and he's got 2 goals. In his World Junior career, in 2022, that was this summer's tournament, he had 10 points in 7 games, one of the top players in the tournament. With Ratti, you get a guy that can do a lot. He's big, he's physical, and that's the part of the game that you like. I don't see a whole lot of faults. He's a good skater. He moves the puck really well. And I think he's a confident guy. He can be a goal scorer potentially in the future, but I'm not certain that's what he's going to be at the NHL level. I view him more as a second to third line center that can have upside, that you could play in a second power play unit. He's not a number one center, certainly, but he fits into a mold of a Bo Horvat, if you will. I don't think he'll ever score as many goals as Bo Horvat. I think Bo Horvat has a higher ceiling. But you replace a center iceman with a center iceman. He's younger, he's cheap, and you can hope to develop him. And he's a Vancouver Canuck right now that's not overpaid, which is a rarity on their roster. So I like the player. You also get Anthony Beauvillier, who is a centerman / right winger. more of a winger. He's got great speed, confident with the puck. He's got some faults that I don't like. He takes stupid penalties. He's not always completely dialed in when it comes to the way he approaches the game. But he's a smart guy. He doesn't always take shifts off. So I like that about his game. Definitely a smart person. And I think his bite, his speed bring a lot to the table for the Vancouver Canucks. And he's a body that you can throw into their lineup. They've had a lot of injuries. They're definitely going to trade more guys at the deadline. I expect Luke Schenn to leave the team. Ilya Mikheyev is down for the rest of the year. So you need NHL players on the roster. You need guys to fill roster spots, just point blank. And he does that. I don't know what the Canucks position here is when it comes to the rest of their season. They hired a new coach midway, which I've talked about that I hate. I don't understand. I'd be looking to lose games right now, and getting rid of Bo Horvat will certainly help that. You should be in the Connor Bedard sweepstakes. You should be doing everything you can to lose. But they seem to be counterproductive to that thinking. But with these two pieces, I expect both of them to play the rest of the year. Maybe Rati will play in the American Hockey League, but again, I think he can play at the NHL level now. Continue to work on his skating. Have him in there, work with the people you brought in with Rick Tocchet, Sergei Gonchar, Adam Foote, guys who were brought into the staff to work with these young players. The Sedins are also a part of this the management core now, and they're on ice with guys after practices, working with them, skill position guys. I think Rati should work with the Sedins one-on-one and in certain situations. So I think this is a good trade for the Canucks. It can also be a good trade for the Islanders, but again, just looking at it, face value, I can't say who won the trade yet, because everybody, if they say, well, this team won the trade, looking at it right now, I mean, that's a stupid position. You can't take a position yet, because guess what? We don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if Bo Horvat is re-signing in Long Island. I don't know what Atu Rati is going to be as an NHLer yet. There's a conditional first attached in this deal. If the Islanders sink, if the Islanders trade Bo Horvat like I pontificated about a little while ago, that could be a top 12 pick. Then Vancouver gets they get 2 first rounders in this draft. Maybe they make another trade. They might have 3 first round picks in the 2023 draft, which is a very good draft according to all pro scouts. That would mean, to me, they win the trade. We have to wait. I don't know who's won this trade yet. I know it gives the Islanders a better chance to win right now, and it gets Vancouver, I think it lets them breathe a little bit. You made that coaching change, which had to happen, but also, again, I won't go into it anymore. Bo Horvat knew he's going to be traded for about 3 months, and they haven't traded him, and that's finally done. When they return from the All-Star break, I think there'll be a sense of just relief from everybody there that they can just reset and play the last 3 months of the season just freely. Bo Horvat can play the rest of the year not worrying about where he's going to go and not having everybody breathe down his neck in Vancouver. Rick Tocchet was coaching Bo Horvat for a week knowing that he wasn't going to be on his team in another month. That's a weird feeling, I would think, for anybody. So now he's gone. Vancouver, if you're going to make this change, if I'm Jim Rutherford, I'm looking at the guys I want to trade and I'm dealing them quickly. Why get Luke Schenn into your program if you know he's going to leave in 2-3 weeks? It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Get him out. Trade him, because why have him take up ice time? Why have him learn a system if you know he's not going to be a part of the future? Let him go. Trade him to a team, trade him to a contender, whether that's the Tampa Bay Lightning, he wants to go back there, or if the Toronto Maple Leafs want to dip their toe back into the Luke Shen waters, wherever that might be. Find out what teams are willing to pay, trade him, move on. If you got to move Connor Garland, you think a trade is there that can happen, move him. Because I'd want the team that I'm looking at moving forward. Not having a bunch of guys that you're trying to teach who aren't going to be taking in the information as well as the others because they know, guess what, I'm leaving. I'm not going to be here. Why should I take in all this information? Why should I care as much as player X if I know I'm out the door in under a month? Because Friday, the trade deadline's a month away. From Friday, trade deadline's March 3rd. So the guys know they're not stupid. They know, I only got this amount of time left on this team. I'm going away quickly. This isn't where I'm going to be. I'm hoping to win a Stanley Cup. This team's hoping to win a draft lottery. I'm going to go block a shot for this team. I'm going to go give my heart and soul. No. Why would you? Common sense. So, Vancouver has done a lot of stupid stuff this season. They're a bad organization most of the time. I think they made a good trade here. I don't know if they won it. I don't know if it's a home run. But I think you knew they weren't going to get top value for Bo Horvat because of the way things have been going. Because of the way everything has looked. It's discombobulated. There's no structure. There was no continuity. No leadership at the top. And with all that being said, it's now time to make a decision. Figure out what your team, what you want your team to look like, how your team wants to play, what kind of identity they're going to have, and identify the players that aren't going to fit that system and move them out. To me, that's how you approach this. Is you look at the situation and you move on. You move on and you approach the last 3 months with the way you want to approach next season and beyond with this core of players, with your new head coach that you've identified as the leader of your franchise moving forward. So good stuff from the Canucks. Good on the Islanders for being aggressive and going to get a good centerman that will help their team. Interested to see how both teams do coming out of this trade. Because both teams are off until next week now, so they have some time to digest. Bo Horvat will have some time to move his stuff from Vancouver to Long Island and prepare for the last 30 games with the Islanders. So fun stuff there, and both teams play each other a week from Thursday, oddly enough, in New York. So a quick return to play his former team for Bo Horvat. One game in the NHL last night, and that was between the St. Louis Blues and Winnipeg Jets. The Jets won the game 4-2. It's their last game before the All-Star break. And I like the Winnipeg Jets. They're at the All-Star break, they're a point away from being in first place. Mark Scheifele's got 31 goals. He's had a great start to the season. Blake Wheeler's been solid. Josh Morrissey's a point-per-game player, very much still in the Norris Trophy race. You could argue that the Winnipeg Jets have had the best goalie in the NHL this year, so they have a lot of good things going for them. Connor Hellebuyck's been great. Looking at the game, they're playing a St. Louis team. They're going to have plenty of guys that I think are going to be traded at the trade deadline. A lot of guys that will be gone. Ivan Barbashev, for me, he might be on my trade list later in the week. Ryan O'Reilly's been rumored forever. You have Mikkola, who's a pending unrestricted free agent defenseman on the back end. So St. Louis, I expect to be active. But it was a tight game last night, a divisional game. And for Winnipeg, as they approach the trade deadline, as they know Mark Scheifele's a free agent, Pierre-Luc Dubois is an RFA, they know some guys could be walking out the door. I expect Winnipeg to be active. And for them, I like their forwards. I think they get a lot of great scoring opportunities, but their main objective has to be defending, getting more defense for me, or acquiring forwards that are better in the defensive zone. Winnipeg gives up too many slot opportunities, meaning right in front of the net. Connor Hellebuyck is asked to make really tough saves, and he's made the most difficult saves per game average this year in the NHL. Leads that category is Connor Hellebuyck. But the St. Louis Blues had 9 slot shots last night. And it doesn't matter the line. They can get to the front of that. They get good scoring opportunities. And if the Winnipeg Jets did not have a goaltender of Connor Hellebuyck's stature, they wouldn't be in the position that they're in. They wouldn't be one of the best teams in the NHL. So you can improve this in a couple of different ways. You look at it, I like Morrissey. I like Neil Pionk. They're two guys that are going to offensive-driven defensemen that aren't exactly perfect defensively. Morrissey's been better this year than Pionk, even though Pionk was a better defenseman for me over the last couple of years. But those two guys aren't exactly going to be Mr. Shutdown. Nate Schmidt is a defenseman for me that, he's hard to figure out what he is. He's not a physical defenseman. He's not a great puck mover. He's not an offensive guy, but he'll play the penalty kill. He'll block shots, but he's not a great NHL player. But he's a body you can put on the ice, and he's played for a number of teams throughout his career. Starting in Washington, going to Vegas, Winnipeg, etc. You also got Brendan Dillon, who I like a lot, who brings that physical presence. You got Dylan DeMello, who's kind of a jack of all trades. So on paper, this defense should be better. And it's not a bad defense. I would add a little size. I mentioned that Mikkola from St. Louis. He would be a great add to this defense. If the Islanders were going to trade Scott Mayfield, I think that would help a lot. If there's no takers for adding great defensemen, because it's tough to get them, I find they decompress a bit. They play too close to the net. They don't gap up enough on the forwards. And that's something that you can just improve on. You can be more aggressive. You can get closer to the forward group, get in closer spaces, make different plays with the puck. Backing up, giving slot opportunities, banking on the saves so then you can clear the puck out of the zone, that will catch up with you. You need to be proactive about that now. You need to look at the situation and say, okay, how can we make this better? How can we do this? For me, quite simple. Again, gap up. Have the forwards make better decisions. Have your forwards come back, be in better defensive positioning to make a play with the puck. So I don't think it's just about the goaltending, because you can make life easier on your team. You can block shots, but you can also be in a better position to don't give up the front of the net. I talked about this last week with the New York Rangers. They give up a lot of opportunities in front of the net. Their defense play loose. They don't take away those key opportunities. Those will catch up with you. Because yes, Shesterkin's just like Hellebuyck. He's fantastic. But eventually, you're going to have a bad game, and you'll lose it because of these scoring top opportunities. You'll have an Austin Matthews. You'll have a Connor McDavid, a Leon Draisaitl, who will go bar down with you playing that loose. Playing stupid hockey, quite frankly. Relying on your goaltender solely is never going to work. And the teams that play like they have a novice goaltender behind them are the best teams. If we watch the postseason, the Tampa Bay Lightning don't play as if they have that monster in net behind them. They block every shot that they can. They get in front of it. They're aggressive. They give their heart and soul to playing solid to really great hockey in front of Andrei Vasilevsky. They give everything they have. Vasilevsky might as well be a pigeon in there. He's a crap goaltender. Nick Paul, Steven Stamkos. It doesn't matter the player. Nobody is too good to block a shot. Nobody's too good to come back and play good defensively. And yes, it's tougher to get to the middle of the ice in the postseason. But if it's easy to do it against you in the regular season, it's easy to do it in the postseason too, because you set that standard early on. So you look at the Tampas, you look at the Torontos, Bostons. These three teams, they don't give up a lot of scoring chances in tight. They don't give up a lot of high-quality looks. Why? Because they play really well defensively. They care about that. They limit really good scoring opportunities for their opposition. That's what you're getting in this pairing. So I like the Winnipeg Jets, and I don't. This isn't to say that they're a bad team with my little soliloquy here, but I also got to look at. Sometimes you watch games and say, yes, this player's awesome. And yes, Mark Scheifele's playing great. Josh Morrissey has been a stud all year. All true. But you also got to look at the situation and say, okay, they give up a lot of these scoring opportunities. They were kind of flat last night. Hellebuck is asked to do too much. But all in all, I like the Winnipeg Jets roster a lot. I think Scheifele's having one of the best seasons of his career. He's got 31 goals at the All-Star break. Blake Wheeler is playing like as if he's more motivated than ever. Got stripped of the captaincy, but he's playing motivated for this team. He wants to win for Rick Bowness. Josh Morrissey's having a career year for the Winnipeg Jets. And quite frankly, at the All-Star break, Erik Karlsson's getting a lot of the publicity because Erik Karlsson, he's in the rumor mill for being traded, which I don't think he will be traded, but again, he's having a great year in San Jose. To me, Josh Morrissey's had a better year. Why? Because his team's winning. His team's relevant. San Jose's not relevant. They're not winning anything. Okay, great. Erik Karlsson's having a great season statistically. Remember when McDavid had 130 points and the Oilers missed the playoffs? He didn't win the Hart Trophy. He can still win the Art Ross. To me, Erik Karlsson should not win a Norris Trophy this year just because you're not making the playoffs. Period. You shouldn't win a major award if you're not good enough to get your team to the postseason. That should be the benchmark for every award. That's what the MLB MVP award's a joke because it's always going to a player that doesn't make the playoffs seemingly. But that's the way they do it. It's always that way. Ohtani, he'd never win an MVP award because the Angels are never going to make the playoffs. When Ohtani and Harper won it the same year, AL, NL, both teams did not make the postseason. Angels and Phillies. Crazy. We got 3 games in the NHL tonight. And those games include the Montreal Canadiens and Ottawa Senators again. Woof. Los Angeles Kings are in Carolina to play the Hurricanes. And the Washington Capitals are in Columbus. Hurricanes are an impressive team. Hurricanes are a really impressive team. I do think they need to replace Max Pacioretty. And I think I'll do my top 5 list tomorrow of my top trade targets at the deadline. I think I'm going to release that list tomorrow on the show here. And those aren't the top 5 players, but just the top 5 players that I would, if I was looking, that I'd want to trade for. And I can try to pair that with teams to make it even more interesting. But there's the Carolina Hurricanes. I'll be tracking that game tonight as well between the Kings and Canes because both teams will likely make the playoffs. But I really like the I like the way the Carolina Hurricanes played. The Los Angeles Kings they might be on my list too of players that they should look to acquire because I got a little bit of an idea for the Los Angeles Kings. We'll talk about that tomorrow. We'll talk about that game tomorrow on the podcast as well. NBA. The NBA has a problem, and I think it's going to affect their viewership. I think it's going to affect their ratings, everything, if it's not dealt with soon enough. And that's load management. The NBA are sitting out players more and more in these big games. Last week, Nikola Jokic and Giannis Antetokounmpo, the two players who have won the last 4 MVPs, did not play in a game against one another. They did not play in the same game knowing that they're playing each other. LeBron James and Anthony Davis did not play last night in a game in Brooklyn against Kyrie Irving. LeBron's former teammate, Kevin Durant's hurt, but he didn't play either. But no LeBron, no Anthony Davis in a game in Brooklyn against Kyrie Irving. I ended up watching parts of the game. The game was completely irrelevant. Why? Because those guys aren't playing. Who gives a shit about the Lakers reserves playing in the game? The Lakers lost the game. They're complaining. Officiating is not the major problem in NBA. Yes, it's a problem. Yes, the Lakers got hosed on Saturday night on Jason Tatum whacking the arm of LeBron James and an obvious foul. But how about load management? How about these players? Your best players just aren't playing. LeBron he's playing tonight because it's in Madison Square Garden. He loves playing in Madison Square Garden, but you can't play in a back-to-back. You're telling me Anthony Davis can't play in a back-to-back? The dude's 28 years old. I don't care how brittle he is. And also, if you're a team that's using load management, not playing your best players, and then you're bitching about refs, bitching about your playoff position and you're 4 games under 500, how about play the games? How about get your ass in the game and play and don't complain about your situation. Complain that your team's been crap all season long. I have no sympathy for you when you don't at least show up to play the games. But if I was buying tickets to go to an NBA game, I'm always looking at different trips I want to do. You have that stupid family day coming up in February. I looked at going to Toronto or going to Ottawa to watch a hockey game. If you're going to an NBA city, you can't do that anymore. You can't plan to go to Denver to see Jokic play because you can't be positive he's going to play. If you want to go see the Celtics, Jason Tatum's been sitting out a ton of games lately. Jaylen Brown will miss every second game. You can't bank on seeing them. LeBron, same thing. He's passing through your town. Who knows if he's going to play? And it's a press release today. LeBron's going to play in New York tonight at MSG for the first time since 2020. Bully. That's what you're supposed to do. It's your job to play games. We've now come to the point where you're releasing press releases on if you're playing. Kawhi Leonard and Greg Popovich started this trend, but now it's on steroids. It's completely gone haywire. Where every team is like, well, our guy's day to day. Well, we don't know if our guy's gonna be in the game tonight. How can you have a product and you don't know what's gonna be there? You go into a Walmart, you know what to expect. You know there's going to be produce. You know you're going to get your cereal. If you're in the States, you can go find your booze in the back of the Walmart. You can get whatever you want there. Get your ice cream tubs, whatever. Costco, you go in there and get your Kirkland paper towel. You can get your Kirkland toilet paper. You buy it, one bag of it. You got enough for about a year's worth, both of them. Great thing about buying bulk in Costco. You know you're going to get your big thing of blueberries. That's the same. The price is the same as the 1/8 version that you get at Foodland for $8. So you feel better about buying that there. You know you can get what you get in the NBA. You don't know. You don't know if you're going to get LeBron James, or you're going to get Russell Westbrook and Thomas Bryant and a bunch of other bums that you haven't heard of, that quite frankly you don't care to watch. But the NBA is letting this happen to fans showing up live, but TV partners have to be furious. Like, for instance, the Clippers are in Chicago tonight to play the Bulls. That game's on NBA TV. I don't know if Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are going to play in that game. They didn't play Sunday, so you think, okay, they play tonight. But do I trust that they're going to play? No. No, because they're flaky. They don't show up half the time anyway. Pelicans are playing the Nuggets. No Brandon Ingram, no Zion Williamson. CJ McCollum going to play, knowing you're probably going to lose in Denver to the two-time reigning MVP? Who knows? We'll rest them because we know we're going to lose the game anyway. Great. Way to concede. That's the way the game is going now. We'll just sit them. You know, yeah, well, we're not sure about this situation. We'll sit them down and we'll move on from here. That's really the way this is going. That's really the way we're moving on here. It's stupidity. It makes no sense. I don't know. But as a fan of the NBA, as a guy that wants to watch the product, I mean, I'm watching Saturday afternoon, no Ben Simmons, no Kevin Durant, no Seth Curry in the game against the Knicks. Why am I tuning into this? Am I going to tune in Saturday afternoon to an NBA game on ABC with nobody playing or watch golf? Easy. I'm watching Max Homa win the Farmers Insurance. I'm going to bank on the best product. I don't have kids, but I'm going to presume if you're a half-decent parent, if you're buying anything for a kid. I had a good analogy there and I lost it off the top of my head. If you're buying oh my God, you put that thing in the back of your car. I don't wear my seatbelt. That's not a good car seat. That's what it is. Stupid kids. That's what I get for bringing up a kid analogy. But if you're a parent and you're half decent or you care enough and you're reading the instructions, the manual for the car seat, and one of them say, yeah, no, the kid will be fine. And the other one says, the kid might fly out of the car seat at any given time. You're probably going to buy the one that said the kid's fine. Right? Okay, the golf might not have the best field in the world, but guess what? Max Homa's here, and we got John Rahm, and we got all these other great players. And the NBA's got Paul and John and Rick and Deshaun, and you're like, well, no thanks. I'm going to watch something else because I know the product over here is going to be better than the product over here. Plain and simple. Oh, my God. I don't get it. As a league, you have to be incredibly frustrated because it's happening to every team now. It's not just the Clippers. It's not just LeBron James in his elder age. It's every team with young guys doing it now. And teams that are not in a playoff position resting guys. My Sacramento Kings don't do that because they win games. Big win over Minnesota last night in overtime. But seriously, Sacramento is a good team, but they're not great. But why are they third in the West? Because they don't sit players. Sabonis, De'Aaron Fox, they play every game. They battle and they play every game. The Clippers are in fourth somehow. Clippers are trailing them. Golden State's trailing them. Why? Because they rest players. Because you concede games when you sit Draymond, when you sit Steph Curry, when you sit all these guys. You know you're going to lose. Sacramento's still going to lose games with full board. But guess what? You have a better chance to win with all these talented players around. Absolutely. Milwaukee resting Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, and Giannis Antetokounmpo all on the same night. Who the fuck wants to watch that? The Miami Heat in 8th place in the East resting Kyle Lowry. GMAB. Give me a break. But I love the NBA. LeBron will play the Knicks tonight at MSG. And I got to tell you, I like watching the Knicks play basketball. For whatever reason, they're a team that I really have drawn into. They're 7th in the East right now. They're not a great team. They're not a bad team. They're going to make the playoffs, certainly, with the likes of Chicago and Indiana, the Toronto Raptors, who are, let's look at this. They are 4.5 games behind the New York Knicks. Woof. Raptors are falling. They're 6 games below 500. They're on a road trip that's not going well. They lost again in Phoenix last night. OG Anunoby did not play. But as I look at the NBA standings, the Boston Celtics have a 2.5 game lead in the Eastern Conference over the Milwaukee Bucks right now. 3-game lead over the Philadelphia 76ers. I don't trust the Philadelphia 76ers, even though I like their team a lot. I don't trust Joel Embiid's health. I don't trust their defense. I watched their game against Denver over the weekend. I've watched them play recently. I love Tyrese Maxey, my guy, off the bench. But nobody can guard on that team. Tobias Harris doesn't defend. Maxey's too small to be a great defender. James Harden has never defended. He's certainly not going to do it now. Joel Embiid's adequate, but the team doesn't play defense, so I don't trust it. Milwaukee, I'd love to trust them, but I don't. Why? Because Chris Middleton's never healthy when you need him to be. Drew Holiday, Giannis, again, he's constantly banged up. I just look at this team. I think they need another piece to really be competitive. I think Joe Ingles has looked really good in this offense. But if Milwaukee could land another piece before the trade deadline, which is in 9 to 8 days, make it happen. The Brooklyn Nets, I don't trust Brooklyn. Why? Well, Kevin Durant, injuries concern me. Kyrie Irving, who knows? He could blow up the world before the playoffs start. With him, you never know. I like the rest of their team. I think Cam Thomas is a good player. I like Seth Curry. Ben Simmons, I'm not going to trust him, obviously. Cleveland Cavaliers are a good team. They're not there yet. The Miami Heat, no, they're not winning a championship. I like the Knicks. You have Atlanta in 8th. You have Washington, who's in 9th. Chicago, and then you have Indiana. If I look at that list, I think you could argue the top 4 teams all could win the championship, but I really don't think. If I narrow it down, I think it's between Milwaukee and Boston. They met in the second round last year, and it went to 7 games. I think one of those 2 teams will represent the East in the NBA Finals again. Unless something crazy happens. But I don't see something too drastic happening here that really shake that up. In the West, Denver is in first place currently with a 2-game lead over the Memphis Grizzlies. Sacramento, my Kings, are in third, 2-game lead over the Clippers. And you have Golden State, Dallas, Phoenix is in 7th. New Orleans has dipped to 8th with the loss of Zion and Brandon Ingram. Minnesota is in 9th. You have Utah, who has the last play-in spot. And then you have OKC, Portland, Los Angeles, who all still are sort of in the mix. In the West, I think Memphis could get to the NBA Finals. I do think they need some help with shooting. And I think they're a team that plays really immature basketball, so you could use some veteran help there. Denver could certainly get to the NBA Finals. Jokic playing at this level. His teammates are better around him than they ever have been. Aaron Gordon fits perfectly. Michael Porter can remain healthy. My Kings won't make it to the NBA Finals. I think the Sacramento Kings can win a playoff round, certainly. If Sacramento played Dallas in the playoffs, I think Sacramento can and will win that series. I don't care if Luka Doncic is playing for the other team. Sacramento's a better basketball team than the Dallas Mavericks are a basketball team. Luka Doncic is one of the best players in the NBA, period. But the rest of that team is dog feces. Golden State could still win the title. I expect them to be active, and I expect them to make a move. They're in 5th spot right now. They play the Clippers in the first round of the playoffs, which would be spicy, which would be a lot of fun if that happened. But in the West, I think Denver, yes. Memphis, yes. Golden State, yes. I can't say yes to the Clippers. I don't trust that health situation. Who knows if Kawhi's going to play in the playoffs? No way. Dallas, no. I'm not buying into Dallas. They got to the conference final last year. They lost in 5 games. And that was a gentleman's sweep. Not really. It was more of a sweep than a 5-game series, let's be honest. Phoenix, I don't like their depth. They're a talented team. New Orleans, I like a lot. But again, health, Zion, Brandon Ingram. The big questions will be, can the Los Angeles Lakers, who are 5 games under 500, who are currently, they're behind Utah. They're 2.5 games out of the final play-in spot in the Western Conference. Oy vey. They're behind Portland, OKC, and Utah for that final spot. Now, they could be aided if the Utah Jazz decide to trade some players like Mike Conley. I don't think they'll trade Lauri Markkanen, but they could trade Jordan Clarkson at the trade deadline to try to offload some assets, get some more draft picks, and look towards the future, which wouldn't be a bad idea for Utah, in my opinion. Danny Ainge will make that call. But look, as we approach the NBA trade deadline, I think there's about 4 or 5 teams that can win the title. That's it. Realistically, if you look at the situation, when it comes to health, when it comes to and just playing good defense, I don't see many teams other than that can win the title. 2 to 3 teams in the East, and 2 to 3 teams in the West. And I think if you get past that, you're stretching and you're hoping for something. Now, that situation can change if there is after the trade deadline, a week from Thursday. I don't know who's going to move first. OG Anunoby's not playing the rest of the road trip for the Toronto Raptors. He's out with an injury. I think that's also because they want to move him. The team that can acquire OG, he's a good player and would add to that team in a big way. He's one of the best defenders in the NBA. He does have a good three-point shot, and if he's on a great team, he doesn't have to be the point man. He doesn't have to be the go-to guy. I tell you, if I'm the Golden State Warriors, I'm poking around OG Anunoby. You got draft picks. You have young players. The Raptors want to take a chance on a James Wiseman to see if you can develop him. Golden State has not been able to, but would you want to take a chance on that player? Do you want one of the youngsters there that could really turn into something? Kuminga. I think they like Kuminga a lot, but OG is a talent now. The Golden State's in a winning championships business, not a developing prospects business. They know Draymond Green's contract's done at the end of the year. They know Steph Curry's not getting any younger. He gets injured every year. Klay Thompson's had numerous injuries throughout his career. You're trying to win another chip this year. Put yourself in the best possible position to do that. Other OG suitors, I've read the Knicks are interested somehow. The Portland Trailblazers are interested in OG, which I don't understand. What do the Bulls do? Zach LaVine's a pending unrestricted free agent. Do they trade him? Nikola Vucevic is a pending unrestricted free agent. Do they trade him? They're in a playoff spot right now. You trade them both. DeMar DeRozan's not going to be happy. He wants to try to win. He went to Chicago to try to win games, but as a management, you got to decide what you want to do. If you want to make the playoffs and lose in the first round, which you probably will, or if you want to see what you can get for these expiring contracts. Chicago is in the play-in spot in the Western Conference by half a game. But they have a number of games in hand on Indiana. But you're hardly in a playoff position. I'm trading both guys. Because what's the point of making 10th in the East? You have to beat the 9th seed, then beat the loser of the 7-8 matchup just to get into the top 8 of the playoffs. And if you're 10th, you're not a playoff team. You're not close to winning. Who wants Zach LaVine? He's a good shooter. He brings a lot to the table. I think teams, the Phoenix Suns, would they want Zach LaVine? I think they should. They'd want some help for Chris Paul. They need another ball handler who can take minutes away from Chris Paul. I think it's a tough trade, certainly. But you got Cam Johnson. Again, you don't want to move him, but I understand it. Campaign. You got draft picks. Can you make that work? Dallas Mavericks. Zach LaVine would help there. He's a good shooter. He's confident. Again, you take minutes away from Luka Doncic, where it's not just one-man basketball and you find a guy wide open. A couple teams out west that jump off the page for me. Gordon Hayward in Charlotte. He could be a buyout and teams want to take him. We look around, there's bad teams in this league. Houston, San Antonio stink. Jakob Poeltl could be moved. He's a center that has been very good on a bad team. He was good with the Raptors prior to his trade to San Antonio. I think the Celtics would love to get Jakob Poeltl as their backup big man to Robert Williams. And who knows, if there's an injury to Robert Williams, Jakob Poeltl could come in and fill those minutes quite easy. You have Grant Williams. So you build some depth at that center position. And you can play a number of different ways with those centers. So we're going to see some movement at the NBA trade deadline for me, because there is no clear-cut favorite to win this year. I talked yesterday about tennis and how as long as Novak Djokovic is still in the men's game, he's a clear favorite and everybody else should be afraid of their situation. But in the NBA, yes, Nikola Jokic is a two-time MVP, and I believe Giannis is the best player in the NBA, and LeBron is still great, and Jason Tatum's an excellent player. Nobody's that afraid of anybody. When it comes to just team dominance, it's not there. Golden State's flying under the radar, and they won the championship last year. They're fifth in the West. Nobody really talks about them. The Lakers stink. People talk more about the Lakers and LeBron's chase for Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's record, which of course is incredible, more than they talk about the possibility of Golden State repeating, or can the Celtics get back to another NBA title after losing in last year's. But if you wanted to make an argument that Memphis is the biggest favorite, or Denver, or Team X, I wouldn't fight you on it. There's about 6-7 teams there. You could make a sound argument that they're the favorite to win the NBA championship. And they would all make sense. Now, if you came to me and said, yes, the Chicago Bulls are going to win the NBA title. No. Doesn't make any sense. But there are moves to be made. There are teams that should be looking at players to try to improve their roster. Looking at a Zach LaVine, looking at a Nikola Vucevic and saying, what would it cost me to get that player? Can we get some more depth to our team? Golden State looking around saying, Dante DiVincenzo has been fantastic. We had to get rid of Gary Payton Jr. III, which was a tough loss for us. But DiVincenzo's been very good. Great guard out of Villanova, national champion. But can we get some more help? Can we do a little more for this team? You can have all the young talent if you want. If they can't play right now, then they're no good to you. If a team's willing to trade to acquire James Wiseman because they see something in him, trade him. Trade him. Get a player that can help you win now. Steph Curry doesn't give a shit about the future. He cares about the now. In the Golden State, Bob Myers knows this. In Golden State, he's about money. He's about revenue. He wants to put asses in seats. He wants to get people talking about the Golden State Warriors. He wants to fill that barn every night, making millions and millions of dollars in playoff gates. Because they show up in the Bay Area. We know that. So the NBA should be fun over the next week to see which team strikes first. We saw in the NHL, the Islanders struck first. They got Bo Horvat. What name will come off the board and who will be traded first? The Raptors played last night. They lost. They got 3 games left remaining on their road trip on the West Coast. OG Anunoby isn't playing in any of them. There's a reason for that, but if I'm a team, I'm striking. Raptors are in Utah tomorrow. Then they are in Houston on Friday. And they cap off the road trip in Memphis on Sunday. By the end of that road trip, I believe OG Anunoby's on another roster. So there's another prediction for this show. By the time we do a podcast on Monday, by the time the Monday show comes, OG Anunoby will be on another roster. Wait to see on that one. NFL news, no head coaches named yet. Still got 4 openings. So we'll wait and see on that. No news yet on that front, but we did learn shortly after the show ended yesterday that Brock Purdy, the San Francisco 49er quarterback, actually suffered a torn UCL in Sunday's loss to the Eagles, which basically means it's an elbow injury, and he might have to have Tommy John surgery, which should keep him out over a year. But as of right now, Brock Purdy is going to miss the next 6 months after having surgery. And that would mean, as we go through it here, February, March, April, May, June, July. 6 months would mean he would likely miss the start of training camp, but that he should, if everything goes well, be ready for the start of the 2023-2024 season. Now, this is difficult because Brock Purdy would miss OTAs. He would miss working with teammates to get more reps, to get better. So he wouldn't be throwing in that time, but 6 months is not a year, but he's still meeting with other doctors, and Brock Purdy could end up missing over a year because of this UCL, possibly a Tommy John surgery. So it's no wonder he couldn't throw because he had no elbow in the game on Sunday. But now the conversations will continue. Brock Purdy makes $700,000. He's guaranteed to be on the roster next year. Trey Lance is still on his rookie contract. He's going to be on the roster next year. What do? You bring in Trey Lance and Brock Purdy, 2 rookie quarterbacks to battle out for the starting job. Easy solution. You don't have to pay any of them any kind of money. You still have a great roster, and you put the money into other great players like Nick Bosa. You re-sign him. You even add more talent to this roster on the offensive line and at the corner position, as I pointed out yesterday. Or do you look at it and say, well, we want to win right now. We got a roster that can win right now. Maybe Tom Brady gives us a better chance to win than these 2 rookies. Which, if you're John Lynch, if you're Kyle Shanahan, you make that move and you go get Tom Brady and you don't win, you're probably fired because you traded a lot for Trey Lance. You would have given up on him. You would have said likely goodbye to Brock Purdy, and you brought in Tom Brady, and you still don't win the Super Bowl. Depending on the injury, Brock Purdy, I would stick with the rookies because if it's only 6 months, he will be back in time for the start of the season. In all likelihood, Brock Purdy will be the backup quarterback, and I think they're going to give Trey Lance another crack at being the number 1. Trey Lance was drafted 3rd overall for a reason. They like him a lot. They think he's incredibly talented. Yes, he was injured last year, but every quarterback on that roster was injured. Brock Purdy, Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance, Josh Johnson, all 4 quarterbacks who suited up for games were injured. So nothing is new there. It's consistent that all of these quarterbacks seem to get banged up at one point or another. There's always the Aaron Rodgers, who's from the Bay Area as well. Maybe he'll want to go back and play for San Francisco after we hear that the Green Bay Packers would prefer to move on from Aaron Rodgers than to have him return for next season. Who knows? What I take from this is this could have been worse for Brock Purdy, and it's the best of a bad situation. Yes, you have a torn UCL. Yes, it's horrible for you because you're going to miss some time. You're going to miss throwing balls and OTAs to your teammates, getting better, getting reps, everything like that. But you're not going to miss an entire season. You could still be back in time enough to earn the starting quarterback job for next season. So I think that's the way he has to approach this. So now it's just up to the 49ers to decide what they want to do at quarterback moving forward and how they want to approach next season after losing in the NFC Championship game these last 2 years. To wrap up the show today, UFC news. 3 fights announced over the last number of days. They're both, all of them pretty big. UFC pay-per-view in April, which is UFC 287. Yes, UFC 287. Will be featured the Alex Pereira versus Israel Adesanya 2 after they fought in November. Pereira knocking out Adesanya in the 5th round. They will run it back. Adesanya will be looking to win back his middleweight title. So that fight was announced as the main event. The co-main event at the event is Gilbert Burns, who just fought in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, beating Neil Magny. He'll be fighting his rival Jorge Masvidal in a welterweight fight. A big opportunity for both men. The month in March, Leon Edwards will fight Kamaru Usman for the welterweight title. So the winner of this fight could definitely be in the mix for getting a title opportunity. Bilal, remember the name Muhammad, Hamzat Chimaev are also in the mix. Colby Covington, even though we don't hear anything about him. All 3 of those guys want to have a say in the matter. But a big main event, a big co-main event for the April card. And then a week later, Max Holloway on a fight night event will be fighting Arnold Allen at featherweight. This is Bless's first fight since losing his trilogy fight to Alex Volkanovski. So we haven't seen Blessed in a while. He was beat up in that last fight, a really poor outing for him, but he's going to fight one of the best featherweights in the world, a guy I think that will be fighting for the belt at some point in Arnold Allen, one of the best featherweights. I don't know why he's not fighting for the title in Perth in a couple weeks. Well, I'll talk about that more as we get closer to UFC 284, which is in Perth, Australia, with just 2 fighters that I like, but I don't think Josh Emmett or the Yair Rodriguez deserved that fight more than Arnold Allen. But again, he could fight Max Holloway. He could be in line for a title fight down the line if everything goes well for Arnold Allen. But Blessed versus Arnold Allen in mid-April, April 15th to be exact. So a fun fight there. A couple fun fights for the April card. I like it. I like it from the UFC. They're making some good fights. The pay-per-view so far, the pay-per-view UFC 285, which is in March 4th, just looks so good at this point. If prices weren't so crazy, I'd be looking at going, quite frankly, with John Jones fighting Cyril Gane, Valentina Shevchenko, Alexa Grasso for the flyweight title. You got Jeff Neal and Shamkat Ramonov, who is one of the most impressive fighters in the game. Bo Nickel making his UFC debut against Jamie Pickett. Fun fight. Derek Brunson against Dricus du Plessis. Up-and-comer Cody Garbrandt is on the card. Marc-Andre Barut, who's a Canadian, is also fighting. So just fun stuff. Excited for that one. Also just announced Ian Gary and Song Kenan added to that. Ian Gary's a fun fighter. Fun stuff. Fun stuff. But tonight, what do we got in the world of sports? We got Lakers Knicks at MSG. We got Kings Hurricanes in the NHL. And tomorrow, on tap, my top 5 players that Noah would want to acquire if I was a GM at the trade deadline. I also want to do my MVP front runners in the NHL as we're at the All-Star break. Preview Leafs Bruins tomorrow night. We'll talk about Kings Canes as well. So we'll talk about all that and more on tomorrow's program. Hope you enjoyed the show today, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow here on To The Point.